Okay, picture the scene. You are the absolute ruler of the known world. You are sitting on a throne that represents thousands of years of stability. You're not just a king, you are, for all intents and purposes, considered a living deity.
The bridge between the heavens and the earth, basically.
Exactly. And then the doors open.
It's a high-stakes moment. So who walks in? Is it generals? Foreign dignitaries?
Two 80-year-old men. One of them is holding a stick.
It really does sound like the setup for a very strange joke. But what follows is, well, one of the most intense political confrontations in all of literature.
It is. Today on the Deep Dive, we're looking at a story that I think everyone thinks they know. You know, we've seen the movies, we've seen the cartoons, but we are stripping all of that away. We are looking strictly at the source text of the book of Exodus to analyze the initial clash between Moses, Aaron, and Pharaoh. And let me tell you, when you actually read the text, the specific words used, it is a psychological thriller.
It absolutely is. I mean, it's a story about a clash of hierarchies, dueling definitions of reality, and ultimately an ecological catastrophe that brings a superpower to its knees.
So we have our source material, these narrative accounts, and our mission today is to really unpack the power dynamics. This isn't just about a simple request to let my people go.
No, it's so much deeper. It's about a fundamental restructuring of who is in charge of the entire universe.
That's the key. If you look closely at the text, this is a battle between earthly power Pharaoh, the apex of human civilization at the time, and a divine authority that Pharaoh doesn't acknowledge and frankly doesn't respect.
And it gets messy. We're talking about staffs turning into snakes, entire rivers turning to blood, and a ruler who refuses to flinch even when his country is literally falling apart.
And that refusal, that hardening of the heart, is central to everything we're going to talk about. It's the engine that drives this narrative from a simple court dispute to a national disaster.
It really is.
So let's start with the players. Because before Moses and Aaron even step foot in the palace, the text gives us this fascinating look at the prep work. God is coaching Moses, and he drops a line that, well, it completely blew my mind. I had to read it twice.
I think I know the line you're referring to, the one about the hierarchy.
Yes. The text says, "See, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron my brother shall be thy prophet."
It's a staggering statement. Just staggering.
I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, Moses, a god.
Well, think about the context here. In the Egyptian worldview, who's the god?
Pharaoh is.
Pharaoh is.
Yes.
He's the son of Ra. He's the one who maintains Ma'at, or cosmic order. And here, in this private briefing, the text just completely flips the script. It demotes Pharaoh.
It's like a hostile corporate takeover of the spiritual realm.
That's a great way of putting it. The text establishes a brand new chain of command. It goes God at the very top, then Moses, then Aaron as his prophet, and then at the bottom of that chain is Pharaoh. By telling Moses, "I have made thee a god to Pharaoh," the text is positioning Moses as the superior authority figure in that room. He isn't a petitioner begging a king for a favor. Structurally, he is a deity speaking to a subject.
And Aaron is the prophet in this equation. He's the mouthpiece.
Yes. The text is very clear. Moses receives the command, he relays it to Aaron, and Aaron is the one who delivers it to Pharaoh. It perfectly mimics the way a god would use a prophet to speak to a king. It's a complete inversion of the power dynamic Pharaoh is used to.
That explains so much about Moses' demeanor then. He's not bowing and scraping. He's walking in and delivering ultimatums.
Exactly. He's operating from a position of superior rank, even if Pharaoh doesn't recognize it yet.
And speaking of the people holding these high-ranking titles, they're not exactly young action heroes. I think pop culture gives us a strapping, mid-40s Charlton Heston.
Right. But the source text is very specific about their ages, isn't it?
It is. It says Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 years old.
So that's 80 and 83.
80 and 83.
They're octogenarians.
It completely changes how you visualize the scene, doesn't it? You have two elderly men walking into the most intimidating court on earth to dismantle the government.
It does, and it emphasizes that the power isn't coming from their physical vitality. It's not about their youth or their muscles or
their army. They don't have an army.
They have a stick.
A rod.
Right. It signals that this revolution isn't going to be won through physical force, but through something external to them. And you have to notice the strategy here, too. The text explicitly says this is not going to be a quick diplomatic win.
Oh, right. The spoiler alert right at the beginning. God tells Moses, "I will harden Pharaoh's heart."
And that's a difficult concept for some, but in the narrative logic, it serves a very specific purpose. The text says Pharaoh will not listen, so that God can multiply my signs and my wonders.
So the resistance from Pharaoh is actually part of the plan?
It's baked into the plan. Exactly. If Pharaoh just folded immediately, if he said, sure, go ahead, there'd be no demonstration of power.
Right, no signs and wonders.
The text says the goal is to bring the people out by great judgments. It's about public knowledge. The verse explicitly says, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord.
So it's a public relations campaign conducted through plagues.
In a way, yes. It's about dismantling the Egyptian worldview piece by piece, publicly, so that everyone sees it.
Which brings us to that first face-to-face encounter. The duel of the rods, if you will.
This is the opening skirmish.
So Moses and Aaron go in, they're standing before Pharaoh, and just as predicted, Pharaoh asks for credentials. The text says, when Pharaoh shall speak unto you, saying, show a miracle for you.
Which, for an ancient king, is a totally reasonable request. If you claim to represent a divine power greater than mine, prove it. Show me your badge.
And the badge is the rod. Aaron takes his rod, casts it down before Pharaoh and all his servants, and boom, it becomes a serpent.
Classic sign of power. But here is where it gets really interesting. In a lot of stories, that's it. The miracle happens, everyone gasps, and the hero wins. But Pharaoh isn't impressed.
No, not at all. He calls in his own guys. The text lists them as the wise men, the sorcerers, and the magicians of Egypt. It's like he's calling in his own IT department to troubleshoot this weird glitch.
And they deliver. The text says they did in like manner with their enchantments.
That's the part that always gets me. They cast down their rods, and their rods turn into serpents too. So now you have a floor just writhing with snakes.
It's a deadlock, or at least it appears to be. Visually, the Egyptian magicians have matched the Hebrew miracle. They've essentially said, anything you can do, we can do.
I find that so fascinating. The text actually admits that the opposition has real power. It doesn't say, oh, they tried and failed. It says they did the same thing.
It legitimizes the struggle. I mean, if the magicians failed immediately, Pharaoh just looks weak. But because they succeed, it creates a stalemate. From Pharaoh's perspective, this Hebrew god is just another local deity with the same parlor tricks as his own gods.
But then comes the twist. The text gives us this one sentence that changes everything. But Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods.
And that is the critical distinction. It's not a draw. It's dominance.
It's literally consuming the opposition.
Think about the symbolism. You have the emblem of Aaron's authority physically eating the emblems of Egyptian authority. It's not just a magic trick anymore. It's a statement of hierarchy. My power digests your power.
That is a brutal image. You would think that alone would be enough to make Pharaoh pause.
You would think. But the text says, and he hardened Pharaoh's heart. He saw the visual defeat. His magicians literally lost their rods. But because they could replicate the initial trick, he felt safe enough to ignore the final outcome.
So he's focused on the fact that his guys made snakes, not that their snakes got eaten.
It's selective attention, and it's a very dangerous trait in a leader. He's looking for any reason to say no, and his magicians gave him just enough cover to do it.
And that selective attention, that hardening, it leads us directly into the first major escalation. The magic tricks are over. Now we're moving to environmental warfare.
Right. This is the turning of the Nile to blood.
The setup here is really specific, too. God tells Moses to meet Pharaoh in the morning as he goes out to the water.
The location is so important. The Nile isn't just a river. It's the bloodstream of Egypt. It's the source of their agriculture, their transport, their religion. By meeting him there, Moses is challenging Pharaoh on his home turf, right at the source of all his power.
And the message isn't just show me a miracle anymore. It's an ultimatum. Moses is told to say, in this thou shalt know that I am the Lord.
It's a direct challenge to Pharaoh's entire perception of reality.
And the trigger is that rod again. Aaron takes the rod, the same one that was a serpent, and smites the waters of the river right in front of Pharaoh.
And we really need to look at the scope of what happens next, because I think we sometimes just imagine the main flow of the river turning red, but the text paints a much more claustrophobic picture.
It really does. The command covers everything. It lists streams, rivers, ponds, and all their pools of water.
So all the irrigation systems, the reservoirs, any standing water.
But it goes even further. What's that specific detail about the vessels?
Oh yeah, the text says there will be blood, both in vessels of wood and in vessels of stone.
That is terrifying. That means the water inside your house, the water in the pitcher on your table, the water in the jar in your kitchen.
There is no escaping it. You can't just avoid the riverbank. The plague is in your home. It signifies a total pollution of the life support system of the entire nation.
And the descriptions are just so visceral. The source text does not hold back. It says, "The fish that is in the river shall die,
Which is a massive food source just gone, wiped out.
and the river shall stink."
Can you imagine that smell? The smell of millions of rotting fish baking in the Egyptian sun, mixed with that metallic smell of blood? It would be an assault on the senses.
And then there's the psychological reaction. The Egyptians shall loathe to drink of the water.
Loathe. That's such a strong word. It's not just that they can't drink it, it's that it's repulsive to them. The very thing that sustains them has become an object of total disgust.
So you have a nation in crisis. The text says, all the Egyptians digged round about the river for water to drink.
They're frantically digging fresh wells, trying to find any source of filtered groundwater, because the main supply is completely toxic. It's a scene of utter desperation.
And this isn't a short event. It goes on for a while. The text mentions a specific timeline. 7 days were fulfilled.
A full week. 7 days of stench, thirst, and death.
So here's where we get back to those power dynamics. You have a national crisis. The river is blood. The fish are dead. People are digging holes in the mud just to survive. What does Pharaoh do?
He calls the magicians again.
And this is the part that just baffles me. The text says, and the magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments.
Yes.
Wait, so they made more blood?
It seems so. And this is such a fascinating, almost absurd irony in the text.
Yeah.
To prove they were as powerful as Moses and Aaron, the Egyptian magicians just replicate the plague. They add to the misery.
Talk about reading the room wrong. Oh, you turn the water to blood. Watch this. We can turn this last bucket of fresh water into blood, too.
But think about what that implies. It proves they have some power, yes, but it highlights what they lack. They have the power to destroy or to mimic destruction, but what can't they do?
They can't fix it. They can't heal it.
Exactly. They cannot reverse the plague. If they were truly superior, they would have turned the blood back into water. They would have purified the river. But the text shows them only capable of exacerbating the problem.
They can break things, but they can't put them back together. That feels like such a scathing critique of that kind of power.
It is. And yet for Pharaoh, that was apparently enough.
It's astounding. The text says, Pharaoh's heart was hardened, neither did he hearken unto them.
He sees his magicians replicate the effect on a small scale, and he thinks, see, it's just magic. My guys can do it too. He completely ignores the scale of the problem. He ignores that his entire country is dehydrated and stinking.
He just focuses on the one technicality that his sorcerers could pull off the same trick in a bowl or something.
Right. And his reaction, as described in the text, is almost chilling in its apathy. It says, and Pharaoh turned and went into his house. Neither did he set his heart to this also.
He turned and went into his house. He just went home.
It's the ultimate dismissal. Neither did he set his heart to this also. It's like he just unsubscribed from the reality of the situation his people were facing.
He retreats into the palace. He separates himself from the suffering of the people digging by the river. As long as he can retreat into his house and dismiss the source of the problem, he feels secure.
But the text is clear that the 7 days were fulfilled. The clock is ticking.
The clock is absolutely ticking, and this apathy, this refusal to set his heart to the problem, is exactly what sets the stage for the next disasters. Because if blood in the water doesn't move you, well, the text implies that the signs and wonders are going to have to get a lot more personal.
They certainly do.
So let's just recap the hierarchy we're seeing play out here, because the text has really laid out a very specific structure.
It really has. You have God at the top directing the strategy. You have Moses acting as the God figure to Pharaoh, the authority. You have Aaron as the prophet, the voice.
And then you have Pharaoh, who is supposed to be a god king, but in this narrative, he's being reduced to an obstacle.
A stubborn one at that. And the signs have clearly escalated from a kind of courtly magic show, the serpents, to a full-blown national resource crisis.
And in both cases, the dynamic is the same. The Hebrew sign swallows or overwhelms the Egyptian reality. The Egyptian magicians replicate the surface-level destruction but can't fix it. And Pharaoh uses that little bit of replication as an excuse to ignore the bigger warning.
It's a pattern of escalation and denial. And it raises a really uncomfortable question about leadership and maybe just human nature.
How do you mean it?
Well, look at Pharaoh. He isn't stupid. He sees the rods swallow his magician's rods. He smells the river. He sees the dead fish. The evidence is, right there in front of his face. But because he can find one counter-argument, why magicians can do this too, he uses that single point of data to ignore the overwhelming reality that he is completely outmatched.
It's like he's clinging to the one thing he understands to avoid facing the thing he can't control.
Exactly. And that brings us to the final thought for you to mull over. The text calls it hardening the heart. We often think of that as just being mean or stubborn. But looking at this story, is it possible that hardening your heart is actually a form of self-preservation?
A way to protect your own ego.
Or to protect your entire worldview? I mean, if Pharaoh admits that Moses can do things that he, Pharaoh, can't fix, then Pharaoh has to admit he isn't a god. And if he isn't a god, his entire society, his entire system collapses. So he denies the reality to save the system.
That's a heavy thought. At what point does that kind of skepticism turn into a dangerous denial that just drags everyone else down with you?
That is the question the text leaves us with, as Pharaoh walks back into his house, leaving his people to dig for water in the mud.
Well, on that cheerful note, that is all the time we have for this deep dive. It's a story of serpents, blood, and the high cost of ignoring the writing on the wall, or I guess the blood in the water.
Indeed.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Stay curious, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.